Welcome, everybody, to another Rates and Barrels without Derek Van Riper. I am losing my damn mind out here, but Trevor May is here to help me, and I will need his help because I do not know how to throw things or to transition or any of that. So I just say, hi, Trevor May. How are you doing?
I'm doing so good. Wonderful intro. You're crushing it so far. No, I know what you mean. It's especially if it's the person you're used to having and pushing things around. But fortunately, we don't have as many subjects. Our show is designed a little bit differently, where we can just kind of rant, which I think
Yes.
we do pretty well. So that
This
maybe
one's
it's
an
just a
easy
ranting
one.
episode. Yeah,
We're
yeah.
doing reliever bonanza today. We're going to do a little bit of news up top, and then we are just talking about relievers, something near and dear to Trevor's heart. We are going to talk about some of the best relievers of the past 4 years, hopefully, then take that to the next 4 years to kind of give you a sense of maybe what to look for and how to evaluate relievers just beyond the numbers. Today, just a little bit of news. Jeff Passan has a piece about Jack Caglione and Roman Anthony and how they might be up soon and why they aren't up yet. But there, I saw this little nugget in there was that Jack Caglione is on basically like a week and a half homestand right now, and that he might be up after that. And I think it's high time. Yes, he chases the pitches outside of the zone as the piece brings up, but he's he's done that a little bit better recently. And then on top of that, how much worse could he be than the current Royals outfield? Apparently in the last week he's out homered the entire Royals outfield over the whole season. So I think it's a dire need right now. That Royals outfield is slugging 333 and could use an infusion of talent. The team is doing pretty well, but it needs more offense. I don't know if you got to see any of Jack, but dude hits the ball super, super hard.
Guy's a monster. Guy's a monster.
Yeah.
Hits the ball really hard, and that is what they need. Um, I'm always a little bit skeptical because it's a situation. Sometimes these things backfire where the team's hanging around and they need more offense, and you bring up a rookie to try to get that offense. Like that kind
With
of
a lot on his
expectation,
shoulders.
yeah,
Yeah.
can kind of hurt development if it doesn't. It depends on the guy, right? This guy seems like he's got an abundance of confidence, so I don't think it's going to be an issue for him. But it is one of those situations where, yeah, sure, he chases more than you'd like, but that's most often a thing that you it's like towards it's part of establishing yourself at the big leagues anyway. So he's gonna have to learn and learn quickly. And if he comes up and is cold for a while, then he's just another guy. And at least he's getting reps at the level that he needs to learn at. So
Yeah.
if that's the
I think that
distinction you're making, then bring him up.
I think that last part is important because it's hard. The game trains you, right?
Mm.
So if you're in the minor leagues and you're chasing too much, you're probably being rewarded for some of those chases, right? Like you're hitting those balls hard because they aren't great pitches. And yes, maybe it was 3 inches outside of the strike zone, but you hit it for a homer, right? So it's like, you know, what you have to do is get to the big leagues where those pitches outside the strike zone are not rewarding you. And then the game kind of trains you to be like, whoa, I can't. I'm not going to swing at that one. Like all I'll do is roll that over. So, I think that there's to some extent, this is something you can only learn in the big leagues. Also, what I've pointed out before is natural aging curves for hitters. Just you swing less over naturally, as you stay in the big leagues because you start to be able to see pitches better. You anticipate what people are trying to do to you. You just become a better player over time that way, and that'll help him. So, I tend to like guys who put up 120s. I also tend to like guys who have quads of steel. This dude, he went to the Trevor May School of Lifting. I mean, he's got hams. And I just feel like that's an important part of power,
Yeah.
is hamstring strength, just quad strength. Isn't there a thing that's kind of surprising to people? That like your standing jump on the force plate is like super important to like how hard you can throw and how hard you can swing. Did you
Yeah.
ever do you ever do that?
Yeah, there's standing jump, and then there's also now they have force plates where it's like in the box, so they can tell how much energy you're putting in your plant foot landing.
Uh-huh.
And with pitching, like the whole mound's a force plate, so they can tell how much you're putting into the mound and then how hard you're coming down. And that was something that I was kind of natural at. I just kind of pushed all my energy into the ground, so that is a big part of it. It is interesting to notice that, especially for hitters, how strong they are in that way, because it makes making timing adjustments. Actually, I mean, you got the natural power, the natural strength, like the idea of staying back longer or sitting deeper into a leg. You already have the strength to do it, so you don't have to feel it. A guy who actually I would like to chat about, who's eventually, maybe not today, who I think is explained by that whole thing right there is. I was live at a Mariners game the other day, watched Jorge Polanco, and saw a change in his hips, and he is strong into the ground. Like, he cocks his hips back, turns himself close a little bit. You can tell from behind, like, you can really tell, and he has been on top of everything. And that's something that I've seen a little bit talked about with Jack as well, that he stays in his legs because he's so strong really, really well, so he can feel that. And that bodes well for making adjustments at the big league level, getting going or trying to slow yourself down so you're not chasing things that you don't want to chase. So he's got that baseline. But yes, that is something that I think, especially in development and in scouting, lots of teams are that's one of the markers for a lot of potential in that area.
Yeah. On the other hand, we have a skinnier dude who maybe nearing the end of his career. Tim Anderson was DFA'd by the Angels, and really, it's kind of weird to draw lines like this. I mean, I think it's just narrative. I think probably his career was on the downside anyway, but pre and post punch, Tim Anderson's career, like if you line him up like that, it's really stark. He was a really good player before that. I think he was already on the way down, and I think the thing that Tim Anderson represents is almost he's like a throwback player. Like he did have some power at the beginning, but he never really put up like the barrel rates that people look for. And he was always such a high chaser. This is the kind of thing that we're worried about with guys who chase a lot, is that the strikeout rate kind of goes through the roof as they lose the ability to make contact. And I talk about Josh Hamilton, Javier Baez, but you have Tim Anderson swinging at 40+%, almost 45% of the pitches he saw outside the zone. And when he was a young man, he struck out 22% of the time. The last 2 years, it's 28 and 30% of the time. So I think that, chase is one of those things that it doesn't have to be important, when they're 24, but it can become pretty important when they're 30. I hope he catches on, but he's going to have to do something about that plate approach, because, basically not walking, striking out 30% of the time and not showing power. He may not get another offer. I don't know. It was fun to watch when he was at his best, though.
I think that's an indicator of reliance on like natural talent. Like you have the ability to put the bat on the ball, so you swing at everything. Two other guys who actually don't swing and miss but chase like crazy are Jacob Wilson and Luis Arias, right? But they have bat to ball skills. Now, the interesting thing about those two is, as they get older and they start missing more, are they gonna work on the not swinging at those pitches? It's almost like self-defeating at times when you're so good at hitting things, everything you see, that if something nags you or gets off, you don't know how to stop swinging at those things, and it gets bad really, really fast. And I think with Tim Anderson at the beginning, like, he swung at everything. We knew that, but he was hitting everything. He could run. He was poking stuff around. He's just really athletic, and he was confident. And then,
go ahead. I think one of the warning signs, just versus those guys, is the Wilsons and Ariases, is like those guys are at like 12 and 14% strikeout rates, and even when Anderson's going well, it's more like 22%. So just what if Wilson in his old age goes up to 18 and 20, right? He's not going up to 28 and 30. So there's that room for error. But what you mentioned, that's why on yesterday's show when we were talking about Chase Mydroth, was like, there's a chance for him to be a slightly different player than a lot of these other guys, because he does not chase, and that changes things a little bit. The Luis Arias types are actually he's at the very top end. He's the very best version of this, but there are other guys who like walk 4% of the time and strike out 14% of the time. They're just not as good as him at like the singles thing. Like that is a type of player that exists out there. But yeah, it's interesting to think about Tim Anderson and looking at, and that's something that we'll do with relievers in a second. And just as a possible transition here, it looks like the Giants are transitioning from Ryan Walker to Camilo Doval at the closer role. I noticed that Ryan Walker's splits this year are a little bit more traditional, and that doesn't surprise me because he's basically a sinker sweeper. He's like a sinker slider guy. And at the high end velocities, of course, the platoon splits can be smaller just because it's still high end velocity. But you would expect him to have trouble against lefties. This year he's having a little bit more trouble against lefties. And then generally, I think that most teams prefer not to have a sinker-based pitcher as their closer. I think that's just because you see some platoon risk there. If you think about it, I don't actually know off the top of my head of a single closer that is sinker-based. There are more cutter-based guys. So Camilo Doval to me is a lesser Emmanuel Clase. Mm-hmm. Cutter slider, won't have as many strikeouts as Clase or even as Clase, but won't have as many strikeouts as your traditional closer. But there is this model before of cutter slider. We'll talk about Graham Ashcroft later. He kind of fits that bill. Then there are a lot of four-seam slider guys, but when it comes to like what is Matt Brash's future, what are some of these sinker slider guys, I tend to think that they aren't necessarily going to be closers with a capital L. Do you share that when you think about relievers? Do you care about what their primary fastball is?
I think with closers, one big thing you need to be able to do because hits happen in the big leagues is shut it down with strikeouts. You got to be able to strike out the side with base loaded with no outs. Like you just have to be able to do it. And there's really not a lot of sinker slider guys who can do that. You can count on that. They might be able to get one or two, but you have to be able to get that. And I think that these guys like Ryan Walker, for example, is like, I'm trying to get the ground ball here in the infield to throw home and throw to first, like get it up play. Still, he's still thinking about that, which is contact, right? And contact greatly increases the chances of a run scoring. So, and that just, you only have to get burned 2 or 3 times on that in a year for it to really not be worth it. And so like kind of Clay Holmes, same thing last year. Like he didn't have a terrible year. It's just like he got in a couple situations where he gave up a leadoff double and he just can't keep that guy from scoring.
Yeah.
And
I think Clay Holmes is a great example.
That's what is always going to be part of being, the closer. That's why like, Edwin Diaz still has the ability to close because even if you're nail biting and he's walked a couple guys, he just knows he's going to go for strikeouts. He always has. He's going to keep doing it no matter what. And so the potential of keeping this, no matter how ugly it is, how many pitches he has to throw, throwing a 0 is something that is always on the table until that run scores. And I don't think I say that with as much confidence for guys who throw sinker sliders because sinkers just easier to put the bat on. It's just that simple.
The only guys that I can see right here that have a good sinker and not a good four seam that are closers. One is Hader, but that doesn't count. Yeah,
that's the four
seam. Another is Aroldis Chapman. Strangely, I'm willing to just say that's a kind of a unique bucket because it is a sinker, but it gets a lot of whiffs. It's more like a running two-seamer. It's also 99. I don't know. Maybe at 99 and 100, you're okay.
Yeah, it's not a traditional sinker. It's not a great sinker. So which means it's closer to a four seam.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So the high velo helps.
I guess the closest is maybe Will Vest, who will show up on our last 4-year our list, but he is I don't know. I think he's just a really quality guy, and also his four seam stuff plus is 100, so he's got maybe just enough four seam to make it work.
And he throws hard enough too. It's also kind of funky. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but he's also got a little bit of a weird arm angle for like how he locates and how he throws some of the pitches. Like it's much higher than you would think it is based on his delivery, which is interesting. He's got a little bit of weirdness, I think, going on as well.
It's like maybe a little bit Holmes-ish, but maybe with a better four seam than Holmes had as a reliever.
He definitely has a better four seam. Yeah, it carries. It just has some more run than most four seams, but it still carries up there. It's up there in the league in carry.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're off to. I mean, we're started it basically, but let's get to our reliever bonanza. Here we go. We're going to do a reliever bonanza, and we're going to start with just a discussion of, the best relievers over the last 4 years. So you're going back to 2020, 22, and you're doing it by WAR. And what you've got at the top are guys like Emmanuel Clase, Ryan Helsley, Edwin Diaz is in the top 10. Those guys I think are just extreme levels of stuff, stayed healthy, for 4 years in a row, and might have been on the easier end to spot when they came into the big leagues. They're just sort of studs that, entered the scene. And we're all like, oh yeah, stud. Closer. Like they didn't spend a lot of time setting up. They were like setup guys for like a year maybe, and then they were closers. And if you watch them with your eyeballs, you don't need stuff plus. They're guys that average close to 100 miles an hour and have 90 plus mile an hour breaking balls, all of them. So I don't know if there's like a real science to those guys. That is super interesting for kind of reliever prospecting going forward, going backwards. The one thing I will say is when I think about, those guys, and then I think about going forward, who we have, I'm not sure that we have as many. We were talking about this before, but like maybe we have Mason Miller and Andres Munoz, who, Andres Munoz actually showed up on the last 4 years. So I don't know, might actually be pushing it to ask for another 4 years to stay at the top. Because it's tough to stay at the top of a list like this, but I can think of Mason Miller as a young guy with extreme stuff that's just announced himself with authority and fits into the sort of Edwin Diaz, Emmanuel Clase, Ryan Helsley. Like he 4 years from now will absolutely be on the top of this list provided he stays healthy. But I don't actually have an answer for a lot of other young guys that are just announce themselves the same way. I don't know if that's just a function of this moment right now, but are there other names that I'm not thinking of that are just like, oh yeah, that guy?
No, I think you're right. There isn't a lot off the top of the head, and it's interesting because a lot of things have changed in terms of, especially since COVID, how quickly they're bringing guys up, how they, they're not like pegging somebody for that role, and then they're getting like Munoz got moved into that role pretty quickly too. They were like, Seawald, see ya. And then Munoz was just a closer. Like there was no conversation. He just inherited it. And everyone knew that's what was going to happen. It was pretty obvious. Yeah, that situation. There are lots of guys that are throwing maybe the 6th, 7th inning for teams that are throwing 99, 100. It's just I feel like they're just much more raw than they maybe have been in the past. And also, I just feel like the confidence level in the ability to get your guys with the best stuff to be starters is higher than it's ever been. And maybe they're hanging up. Like Mason Miller going to that role that quickly. It was just because he could not throw very many innings. He just got hurt so much in the minors. He only threw 24 innings before he got to big leagues. Like that, they're like, this ain't happening. It's been 4 times.
If he was like a tiny bit healthier, he would have followed at least the Graham Ashcroft, right?
100%. He'd still be a starter now. If he didn't get hurt that last year or that first year at all, if he didn't go on the IL at all, he'd probably still be starting. They'd be still trying to start him. But I think the decision was just made early because of the number. They're like, we just need this guy on the field, and if this is what it means,
yeah.
This is what it means.
I mean, your point is also made by how many relievers are being turned into starters these days, because we have. We had Clay Holmes, just making that transition from being a closer. They could have easily just, kept him as a closer, even if it wasn't a perfect fit. In days past, they might have just done that. Instead, now he's a starter because he's got the starter repertoire. The only names I could think of, I think Robert Suarez is sort of close.
Yeah.
He just doesn't really have, some of the strikeout rates and stuff numbers I don't know that I would want to stake my claim to him. Joan Duran is somebody that might just be there for the next 4 years because he's got excellent stuff. I guess I wonder a little bit about the health with him.
Yeah.
Seems like
And
he's
Suarez is like what, 33?
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
he's just old. Like I just think he's just kind of, his story's unique, and he was just a late bloomer, and that kind of that dings him a little bit because you're like, he's just not a young guy.
He also doesn't really have a great secondary. Like he throws a cutter and a change, but he doesn't really trust either of them.
Yeah.
So there's some questions I think around him. So if you wanted me to like say, I think these 3 pitchers are going to be here on this leaderboard in 4 years, I guess I would guess Andres Munoz, Mason Miller, and John Duran. Just because you're just putting me in a corner, and that's the way I get out of that corner. But we did want to talk about some guys who were top 30 that may not be obvious. They may not be that were obvious, especially at the time. And I wanted to let me open the floor for you. I think you wanted to talk about Jason Adam. I think you're basically frothing at the
He's my
bit to
favorite
talk about Jason Adam. You love
leagues.
Jason Adam.
I love the guy because one, I just completely mimicked him in 2023, and it fixed me. That was a big deal. But so I want to kind of frame this in the way I kind of think about relief pitchers. Well, all pitchers, but relief pitchers specifically, because making adjustments quickly for a reliever is almost more important than for a starter, because you might pitch the next day. Like being really fast with seeing something that's not working and then stopping is important, because 2 bad outings could just ruin your year. So it's so important to do that. So Jason Adams, maybe the best guy I've seen out there, the way he's adjusted over these 4 years to maintain himself, like his success, because he's done it in different ways the whole time, which is just really impressive. So there's kind of 2 buckets, I guess, in pitching, and one, especially for relievers, one is like there's a elite pitch or elite combination of 2 pitches, wipe out. So like when it comes down, push comes to shove, you're getting the nasty thing. And we're
why
going to lean on
bother, add a bunch of pitches? Like
why bother adding a bunch of stuff? And maybe we have a wrinkle to throw platoon against platoons. There's a couple guys in here that have something, so they have a weapon against a platoon split just to keep him off guard, but they're still going to go to their bread and butter. And then there's guys who are covering or are the relationship to each other. All the pitches are relationship to each other, or the
baby starters.
Baby starters. They're keeping,
like they have a 4-pitch mix or something.
They have a 4-pitch mix, and they're using those pitches to get the dominance type stuff that they need as a reliever, like get the swings and misses. So that's what Jason Adam does. And this is really interesting. I'll show you all these pitches after, but after I break it down. But he throws 4 pitches. And the way he's used these pitches has changed, especially in these 4 years. So he threw no gyro in 22, 23, and then he started throwing a gyro in the middle of 23, and then took it in 24, and now he's got one in 25. Here's how all of his pitch mix has changed. You can see basically when it goes up and down year to year, and there's pitches added in here. He even tried a knuckle curve in there a little bit. Like it is very, very interesting how this has happened, because he's very clearly reacting to how these pitches are performing on the field.
And his core is that changeup, right? Like that's his best pitch, quote unquote.
It is his bulk pitch. But he has optimized all of his pitches too, and we coined this name right before the show. He's in Magellan. He covers all 4 quadrants of the compass if you're looking at the zone: the north, south, east, and west. So the interesting thing is he throws a sweeper, he throws a gyro, he throws a 4-seam, and he throws a changeup. So the changeup has arm side run, the 4-seam has good ride, and he throws the top of the zone. The sweeper throws it has a horizontal movement going glove side, opposite of his changeup, almost exactly. It's like 17 inches of sweep and 15.5 inches of run. So those 2 things are going opposite way. And then the gyro goes straight down, like there's no horizontal. So he's covering south. So when he throws a pitch, the hitter to have to think it could go all 4 directions. That is optimization, and that's why he added the gyro late.
It's a
because like,
little
I
bit
need
like
that
Adam
depth.
Bonavino, right? Sinker slider with
Yes.
the out of the cutter to basically stay in the middle.
To stay in the middle, yes. And then he's like, oh, depth is coming back. Depth is really important. All these guys are throwing curveballs. That's not my game. Maybe I can throw a death ball or gyro to get some depth. And then he did it. And all these pitches are like his gyro's like top 2% in the league in depth. It's 5.5 inches more depth than similar sliders. Like all of his pitches are like
I want to see the changeup. I love this changeup.
And his changeup's great because he uses it. And I've asked him this question. I'm like, do you think of your changeup as a sinker kind of sometimes? Because he throws 94, 95, and his sinker's like 87 to 90. Sometimes he's like 90, 91 with it. But he's throwing that into righties, and then he's throwing sweepers away from them, or he's throwing four seams up and in, and then he's throwing a changeup off it. But he just throws the changeup because it moves a bunch, and it functions like a sinker. So let's just watch his pitches back to back so you can see all these different quadrants that he uses. So I think we
have 2-pitch from Jason Adam. Swing and a miss, and Soler strikes out.
So that was the four seam up.
Yeah.
So Soler was like, I'm looking for a way or a sweeper or something or depth, or maybe he's got a bunch of changeups. And then he just gets 94 gets blown by him because everything else is softer, especially the sweeper. He's like high 70s.
He's got is the sweeper next?
Yeah.
And yet he's got an 0.79 ERA. As Pena swings, this one gets away. Maldonado will fire, not in time. And a break for the Astros.
Hate to see that, but like, look at that swing. So he identified a guy who can't hit east-west and throws that one to him. And then we got you'll see there's a pretty nasty gyro here too.
Comes back to strike him out.
And you see Tommy Pham, flat swing. He's like, depth is better than Tommy. And he swung at it like, oh, that's way lower than I thought it would be. Jason Adam knew that, and he had a pitch for it. He didn't have that before. Now he has it. And then we have just the bread and butter changeup. Watch this thing run.
Star of the show.
Run down it.
Swing and a miss. Back-to-back strikeouts for Jason.
That's so like if you're a reliever and you have all those things and you have mid-90s, you're going to be really good. To the tune of, here, I'll hit you with some stats. Over the last 4 years, there's a 2.02 ERA and a 160 batting average against. For 4 years. Like,
yeah,
that's maybe that he could be, that's top 5 batting average. It's got to be up there with like Devin Williams and Hader and like these guys. 77 holds and 24 saves. That's over 100 leverage stats of 200 outings. Half of them. Like, that's as reliable as you can get. 60% 30% K percentage, and then 8.5 walk, which is just league average, which makes his chase rate better because people know he might throw a ball, which is important. You can't only throw strikes. Terry Skubal gets hit with that sometimes, where he gives up 12 runs because he throws so many strikes. So like it's like literally he's optimized. There's no other way to say it. Like I don't think there is a better version of him. I think he has been the best version of himself, and he's good at figuring out what he needs to adjust in order to continue to be the best version of himself. And that's the type of thing we're looking for relievers. If I were a reliever, I'd be like, what's Jason Adam do? I need to create my own version of that, whatever that is.
It's interesting. I wonder if he's going to be a closer ever. He does at 95. That's actually maybe below average velo for a closer. But he's established. What it reminds me of a little bit is the sort of Raisel Iglesias. Like, this is a guy who's going to get outs, and he's going to be able to figure it out year over year. But he may not be ever like Mason Miller. He's not going to be a top 3 closer in the league.
Well, if you think about it, the same thing happened to him in Tampa. Pete Fairbanks was given the chances because he threw 100.
Yeah.
And he was big and power and threw 100. And so strikeout rates are similar. Like, it wasn't like Pete Fairbanks also strikes out a bunch of people, but it's not like he was way better than Jason Adam at striking guys out. Like, if you're looking for the K, get out of the big situations, they're both good at that. But they were just like, no, the 6'8" guy who throws 100 is the prototype for that, and you're more of a pitcher, so you're gonna pitch in more. You're more versatile in situations, which is really weird to think because traditionally we've always thought the closer was the best reliever. But like in that context, you're like, yes, they are the best reliever stuff wise, but they can only do a couple things really well, as opposed to being able to do everything really well. So you're gonna pitch more different situations.
Yeah, I wonder if he will just get like a setup man's deal and be just underrated going forward for another team. You know, or if a somebody like the Braves is like, no, we're cool with like different kind of closers than everybody else, and we're going to step forward. The one I wanted to a guy that I wanted to point out that's like him a lot is Griffin Jax, and I called it the baby starter package, and he throws 4 different pitches, and he's slider heavy. He loves that sweeper. It's a really good sweeper, but he's developed a 4-seam off of that, a changeup off of that, a sinker. So he throws 4 pitches more than 8% of the time. And I wanted to look at the list of guys that were like that. And there are some guys who might be starters going forward. And there was one thing that we thought about with Jax. I think probably the door has been closed on that for Adam and maybe for Jax at this point in their careers, because it's been so many years since they last started. But that is going to be a temptation, like it was for Clay Holmes and others, where you have this large mix. Could you be a starter? So Ben Kasparius is second in stuff plus among pitchers with 4 pitches or more out of the bullpen. And he's actually my favorite for taking the possibly open job right now in LA and going with it. I know some sites have Justin Robleski listed there. I know there's a debate right now about who that should be. I really like Ben Kasparius, and I think he can be a starter. But other guys on this list, Yimi Garcia is actually, despite having the number 1 stuff on this list, does throw a curveball 16% of the time, a slider 18% of the time, a sinker 14% of the time, 4-seam 43%. He's one of my favorites for some team signing him to a decent smaller deal and profiting off of it. He's another guy I don't think will get a closer deal. In fact, I don't see anybody on here that will get a closer deal, but I do like a lot of these guys. Brock Stewart is back to being good, and he was a starter for so long that he kind of brought that energy. Justin Martinez has 4 pitches. Whether or not he can command them, I don't think he can necessarily be a starter because he has command issues on a lot of them. But Justin Martinez becomes more interesting to me because, hey, here's a guy who does have closer stuff and 4 pitches. So that's somebody that I want to bet on. Like Aroldis Chapman is on this list. And I highlighted Jackson Rutledge as somebody that you may not expect to have 108 stuff plus and 5 pitches. I wonder if he could make a start in the future, or just hold down this kind of like middle 7th, 8th inning. It's just good to have options. The other type of archetype that I wanted to point out that was interesting going backward, that's on this top 30 list over the last 4 years. Tanner Scott is the 4th best reliever since 2022 started. It goes Clase, Helsley, Jax, Scott, Williams, Munoz. And Scott, since the 2022 started, has a 2.91 ERA, 5 wins above replacement. Just excellent numbers, except for one little area, which is the strikeout rate. And I mean, not the strikeout rate, the walk rate. And that's something we've always known with Scott, is that he does not have excellent command, but something identified as a possible way to see reliever breakouts like Tanner Scott's before is this chart that I've got. This is the chart that shows Tanner Scott's rolling zone percentage versus his ERA. And it tells a story that you probably already knew, which is that, like, when he thought he had bad command and he was nibbling and everything, he had the bad ERA. And then when he just trusted his stuff and threw his nasty stuff to the zone, his ERA plummeted. And so, that is a thing that I think other relievers could follow. So I just looked at, zone percentage. I just sorted by zone percentage on Fangraphs the wrong way. So the lowest zone percentage. And then I looked for guys who have high stuff plus and a low zone percentage. I won't talk about him too much because we're talking about it later, but Brendan Little, 34% zone percentage, league average is 52. and he has a 121 stuff plus. So he doesn't know he needs this yet, but at some point he needs to throw it more in the zone. And I think he has the stuff to do it. But I also wanted to point out that Jeremiah Estrada, another person we're going to talk about, has a 46% zone rate, and I think he can be in the zone more. But there's an athletic on here, Justin Sterner. Also, Mason Miller's on here, 45% zone rate. I think that might be part of the struggles this year. Mason, you know it. Just throw it middle. And then Justin Sterner has had success this year, 26% strikeout rate, 13% walk rate, though, and a 108 stuff plus. I think he could benefit from throwing in the zone a little bit more. But this is something you can do on your own, where you look at zone percentage, you look at stuff plus, you put them on the same board. Reed Garrett, 112 stuff plus, 47% zone percentage. These are guys that could break out with a little bit more. Even Trevor Megill, 48% zone, 121 stuff plus. Do it. Throw it more in the zone. And I think that could be a part of the future Tanner Scott, as somebody who has a big walk rate right now, just deciding to be like, hey, my pitching coach just told me I have nasty stuff. And then you do it a couple times, I feel like, and you're like, aha, yeah, okay, I get it. Like,
yeah. There's a weird thing that happens when guys come into the big leagues with maybe not necessarily the best command yet, or even like they know they don't have great control. So when I got called up, this is a process I had to go through, like in the big leagues. In AAA, my last year before I got called up in 2013, into 2014 is the first time like my walk rate went down to under 8%. Like I was in the 6s, 7s, and I my whole career had been over a 4 per 9. I don't know what that comes out to percentage wise, but like I walked a lot of guys, but I struck out a lot of guys, but I walked a lot of guys. And so I had this idea that, I don't have great command, I don't have great control, I'm a walk up, but like I need to get better at that. I got to the big leagues and I made a decision, like we got to throw it into the box. Like we just got to have good control. We just have to throw more strikes generally, and you got to sacrifice hits probably and strikeouts a little bit too to get that, because you're not going to stay here unless you do that. And then once you had control, then you could start shaving those stuff off and get a little bit better. And so I think guys who come up are like, I don't have great control. It's scary.
They
I'm throwing it in the box.
They just internalize the what they know people are talking about or whatever.
Yeah, or it's just like define them a little bit. So going the other way and just saying throw it in the box feels like you're giving something up. Like you're giving away something that makes you good, your strikeout rate or your nastiness or your chase rate. That's gonna diminish if you commit to just throwing it into the box. But it's hard to do. And then once that happens, like I feel like the Tampa Bay Rays just made it simple. They just came like, we're giving you one target. Yeah. And they're like, oh, they took the choice out of your hands and they're forcing you to do it. No wonder Joe Boyle went over there and made in his first start in the big leagues, had a no-hitter going into the 6th. Because of course he did. Like I knew that was going to happen because he's nasty. He just couldn't throw strikes. So like aiming for the box, sometimes you have to be given permission for that to be your goal. And so we got to see some of these guys do that, because they are nasty. It's hilarious that because I feel like Tanner Scott was a guy we all watched. We're like, how does this guy give up any runs? How does he have a 5? How? This is impossible. But it's the walks. Or that being 2-0 to everybody. And guys can hit 98 when they're 2-0. They just can. So just throw the strikes a couple more. So a couple more strikes earlier in a count, and suddenly your entire life changes. It is that simple.
Yeah, I think so. Another guy, Abner Uribe, we'll talk about in a second. I think he's taken off a little bit more by just trusting his stuff in the zone. But you had one more guy from the last 4 years that you wanted to highlight here.
We can quickly touch on him because he's in that other bucket of, I have a nasty out pitch that I'm going to get myself. Everything else is to point me to getting to that pitch. And that's his slider. He loves the slider. It's a 2-plane slider, and he's got ride. So he's got a ride guy with a 2-plane slider, and he throws a changeup that is literally almost only to lefties. And he'll work in a sinker every once in a while that is only to righties. And that's like his wrinkle pitch to the platoons. But he wants to throw his 4-seam fastball, high 90s, and he wants to throw that 2-plane wipeout, high 80s slider. And that is what his bread and butter is going to be. The interesting thing is, say again.
His name is
And his name is Jeff Hoffman.
Yeah.
We didn't say his name. That's funny.
Yeah.
Jeff Hoffman. So we're talking Blue Jays Jeff Hoffman. He's got a 5.5, but it's funny. All his peripheral stats are the same. They always are. He just got unlucky a couple times. And he just relies on his slider and leans on that. But that's the interesting thing about the guys like that, longevity-wise. Usually they're a little harder to predict than the guy like Jason Adam, because Jason Adam's showing us in the numbers how he makes adjustments. When someone relies on an elite pitch, what happens when that age starts to make that pitch a little bit less elite? How do they adjust? We don't know until it happens. So the risk is seen. I think they're seen a little bit more risky, or they should be, in my opinion, which I don't think they are. I think they're still seen. I think they still get more leeway. They get paid more than a guy like Jason Adam would get paid, which is an interesting kind of thing that's happening here. But Jeff Hoffman's been very, very good too. He's not as good overall, maybe a slightly higher strikeout rate than Jason Adam, but everything else is pretty at par or slightly worse. But I think he represents that side of things, that like, I have this really, really nasty pitch and I'm developing everything else around it. So I have wrinkles in there, but I know that's my nastiest pitch. I think those guys can get pigeonholed, at least in terms of hitters getting ready to face them. It's much easier probably to prepare for Jeff Hoffman than it is to prepare for Jason Adam, but they're still both really effective and really good pitchers. It's just how do you go about it?
I think it might surprise people that probably Ryan Helsley is a little bit like this. He does throw 100, but it's his slider that gets the good grades. I'm trying to think of, Duran is actually like this, because John Duran's fastball is a little bit not the best shape because it's kind of sinkerish, and so Duran's a little bit. Yimi Garcia is a little bit like this, but his four seam has good shape. Amir Uribe might be a little bit like this. But this is an interesting transition, because Jeff Hoffman used to be a starter, and he, is so lights out as a reliever. Just to place him on that group, he was top 20 in WAR in the last 4 years, and he's been so good. You said you saw a potential starter that, if and we're not saying that he has to be a future reliever, but if he did become a reliever, maybe he could have that same kind of categorical juice.
Yeah, Graham Ashcroft.
Yes, but you were talking about a Cub.
Oh, a Cub. Oh, Horton.
Yeah.
Cade Horton's got he's an outlier pitch. Like his four seam in quotations is a slot. He just throws a slider for a fastball, and it is. I mean, if you get it under command, it's one of those pitches that you don't see from anyone else except for Brian Shaw, who keeps just appearing because he's trying to throw 1,000 games. He throws this like natural underneath supinated spin, like cutter spin, four-seam fastball that is like one of those type of pitches that because he throws 94, 95 now, if he was throwing at 98, 99, like it's up there with Clase A's cutter. Like that is filthy. So it's just kind of an outlier pitch that sometimes when there's an outlier pitch that projects to be a relief pitcher success right away, because velo usually comes, especially
he doesn't really have a large arsenal when it comes to other plus pitches. That is one of the interesting ones. I've also had questions about why that pitch doesn't rate better on Stuff Plus. You mentioned some of the biomechanical aspects of that pitch that are not included in Stuff Plus. So there are aspects of the way he releases it that make it surprising. But if you look at it in a vacuum as just a collection of velocities and numbers, there are other pitches like this, and in fact they come from the Cubs. I mean, in essence, he's a little bit like the Justin Steele four seam, reversed on a right-hander. And so this isn't a pitch at 94 that the model says, I've never seen anything like this and I can't deal with this. It's more like, oh, this is a little bit like other people's cutters. It's a little bit like this. And so it doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't say it's really a great pitch right now. I know that's hard to square with some of the, pitching ninja stuff you'll see on how it looks. But I do agree that if that was at 99, he would fit right in with Emmanuel Clase, Camilo Doval, And then my favorite starter conversion, you just mentioned him, is Graham Ashcroft. He's got that cutter, cutter slider mix that we've seen from Clase, that we've seen from Doval. And I just wanted to point out that if you look at the last 30 days, this is the last 30 days stuff plus. And I'm not doing this because like, oh, they made a tweak or we're just like, no, in the last 30 days, he's become a reliever. Beginning of the year, he was a reliever. Last 30 days, if you look at it, Ashcroft is throwing harder. He's become a reliever. He's had that reliever mentality. He's starting to really set into being a reliever. So this is the best stuff plus over the last 30 days.
Pretty good.
And you see Graham Ashcroft there at 4th. Helsley still near the top. Mason Miller, Brendan Little, a lot of the guys we've been mentioning are up here. And so I think this just captures what he can be like as a reliever. And so when you see a starter change to a reliever, I think, capturing, short sample stuff plus sometimes can really, point out that this is going to be a big change for them. And Ashcraft is my favorite for saves in Cincinnati going forward. Now, if it's going to happen this year, maybe not. Maybe Pagan just dances that dance all the way to the end of the season, and I'm wrong. But he is my favorite reliever in that bullpen because he's gonna avoid homers in a way that Pagan doesn't, and that's going to be important in Cincinnati. And he's also over this time period got a 10 strikeouts per 9 number that he never had before. So this is Graham Ashcroft in the first 3 innings as a starter, and we always knew that was good. So, I think you have to keep an eye out for guys who are starters right now. If it is a Cade Horton or whatever, starters right now that kind of make that transition, they can be Hoffman, they can be really good relievers in the short term. You wanted to highlight somebody else going forward?
Yeah. So moving forward, if we want to predict a guy, maybe give him, if he added one thing that is almost a certain a foregone conclusion, in my opinion, is Jeremiah Estrada with San Diego. I just checked on Savant what the inches, the gravity affects his fastball. It's a 7.6, which I've never seen anything that high. I went and looked on True Media. His average IVB is 21.4. That is that's the highest I don't think I've ever seen anyone do it for even 2 months. So that might be the highest IVB of any pitcher. He was second in the league last year behind Vesia. I think he is now the highest this year, and he's throwing high 90s. So he has this straight over the top motion too. So it looks like it's going to ride, and then it rides more. Like that's as close as we get to an actual rise ball that exists. But then it comes down to his off speed pitches. He throws a splitter in quotations, which is like a kind of a Vulcan changeup. He splits the middle 2 fingers and goes deep with it, and it kind of fades a lot more when with his motion. It looks like it should go straight down, and because it doesn't go straight down, he gets weird swings at it and misses at it. And the velo is lower than you expect as well. It's like a fork ball, like low 80s speed. So like that is his. It's weird though. It's not a movement thing. It's weird. And then he throws it like
called a chitter because it's almost like a cutter too.
Yeah, and sometimes because he gets that fork ball like weird spin sometimes, so it goes the other way. Slow. It's a slow spinning pitch, and that is it's weird, but like in a vacuum, doesn't move a ton and doesn't have a lot of depth to really counteract his four seam as much. So he has to he can leave it up sometimes, and it gets got if he's in the top of the zone with his four seam, and then he's got a little like cutter slider thing. It's just
I think the way
slider.
Forward
it's not really the weapon.
It's a gyro, and 89 it doesn't really stand out, but I think the step forward for him will just be feel on that splitter. I mean, we're talking about year 2 of it basically, and I don't know that he needs a step forward necessarily. I mean, he's kept his ERA under 3 2 straight years. He's been a great setup man, but I think just a little bit more advanced feel on that, and I do think that this could be somebody who has staying power, and I think that he's sitting 98, so this is somebody would sign as a closer, I believe.
If he learned some sort of, if he learned like the Jason Adam depth gyro, or honestly Helsley, if he did the Helsley thing, he's a closer. Like, because Hedman Helsley throw straight over the top and have crazy ride. If he could just have something that went straight down the opposite of his four seam, just a little bit, like he doesn't need to be crazy, just opposite of the movement. Then he's got three weapons. Then he's a closer.
Maybe interesting to like try a power curve with him.
Yeah, or a power curve, or like
a death ball,
whatever's
easier.
Like
try
that stuff.
Something that just has a little bit more movement than the one he's got. But
judging by his slider, it's probably not something he's probably tried a lot of stuff and probably hasn't found anything that's stuck yet. Would be my guess.
I just want to see the Estrada split. Let's see it. I just want to see it. You got a video of it?
Yes.
Got it. Another splitter.
Yeah, that looks like a changeup, right? That looks like a fading, looks like a seam shifted changeup.
Yeah.
It's a slow one. So it's not a power changeup, but it moves like a power changeup, which is weird because no one really does that. I just don't know how long that is going to be weird.
Like how will people start to pick it up?
Pick it up a little bit because it's not moving. It's really not moving a ton. It's got some fade, no depth. It stays up. It like carries a little bit, just kind of fades off to the right, which is weird, especially with his fastball. So hopefully that's not a one trick out pony because his slider is not an out pitch. He has no strikeouts on his slider. Or is one, I think, looking, but there's no swing and miss on it. So it's that or learn something that's a power curve or some sort of hard slider that's all depth, and figure that out. That probably is the next step. That is probably the next thing he tries.
My favorite guy doesn't need anything. Randy Rodriguez, I think, is the secret to why the Giants bullpen has been, as I predicted, the best bullpen in baseball. And one of the reasons is it's slightly different than Estrada. So Estrada, like you mentioned, is way over the top and has that ton of ride. There are other guys like Randy Rodriguez. He gets 18s. Now you're just saying Estrada gets 20s. That's better, right? 20 is bigger than 18. However, Estrada's arm angle is 66 degrees.
Yeah.
Randy's is 39. And so you see the 39 and you'd expect less. So this is thanks to Alex Chamberlain's pitch leaderboards. This is the extra inches over dead zone on the fastball. This is just the leaderboard with no minimums. So Aroldis Chapman on his four seam gets 4 inches more movement than you'd expect given his arm slot. Randy Rodriguez is right there with 3.5. The velocity's not on here, but Randy Rodriguez is a high 90s guy too. Mason Montgomery, a guy we love, also in Tampa. David Bednar, the fastball is not the problem. It's the command of the secondary stuff. Jeff Hoffman is on here. Hunter Green, Mick Abel is one of the reasons why Stuff Plus loved his debut and why, I picked him up wherever I could, even though he went back down. I'm going to try and hold on to him because I think he's going to be good, maybe better than Painter. Robert Suarez's four seam is on here. Surprising. I think he has that sinker-ish arm slot. Nick Enright, Jacob Latz, and then Jordan Leisure, who is one of my picks to click. We'll finish with some pitches you need to know at the end. But that's my little spiel for Randy Rodriguez. I think he's already doing everything he needs to do. I don't know that he needs to do much else. He's an uncomplicated fastball slider guy, but he's got a 40% strikeout rate right now and a 3% walk rate, sitting 97. I think the only question about him and his future is, I actually think he could even get saves this year because Doval, his stuff is not what it used to be. And he's not going to get the strikeouts you expect from a closer. So if he starts, allowing hits in play, they could move on to Randy Rodriguez. But the only question going forward, if it's not this year, is how does the velocity age, and what does that velocity look like when he becomes a free agent? Because he could be just somebody that just loses a little bit, and then by the time he's a free agent, he's 95, 96, and it all doesn't look quite as good. Because I do think this plays better when you're only fastball slider. Like, he doesn't have any extra tricks. He doesn't have the 4 pitches. It's just a fastball slider, but it's really good and it's unexpected movement. So I wanted to highlight somebody that I think could close probably for the Giants. I don't know if he'll be on the 4-year leaderboard, but probably.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it until a certain point. I think it's
Yeah.
interesting the balance between worrying, like trying to future proof somebody and
and
then
getting
or
dominance
just
now.
riding with it and keeping
Yeah.
it simple. And I think that's the crux of like really good coaches. They know if the guy wants to be future proofed or needs to just be left alone, and those are the best guys that do that. And he's probably a guy who's like, hey, if stuff starts to go wrong or a little bit, he's not feeling good about, and we need another option. Maybe this is a guy we go to, or maybe this is something we try. Same thing with Estrada.
He's got 40% strikeout rating. I mean, yeah, what are you going to tell him?
Yeah, like why? Do we? Is he going to start thinking we need more strikeouts or we need something from him? Because sometimes guys react that way. Like, why are you telling me to do this? Everything's going well. They need a problem to solve, and when there's no problem, let's not solve it. I was a guy who's trying to solve problems before they were there, and that was just the way I was. So it's one of those things. But my last guy I'll touch on real quick before we get out of here, because he's very similar to Hoffman. That's Will Vest with the Tigers, hard thrower. Maybe not movement profile as much, but in terms of his arsenal, how he uses them, it's four-seam fastball. 96.9, I believe, is his average this year. He tries to elevate his zone, but he's a little bit actually more in the middle of the zone. So that's a little bit of concerning. But he does throw up in the zone, and then he's got a wipeout two-plane slider that he loves to throw, and then he uses his changeup to lefties and his sinkers to righties, and uses that kind of as an option. He's got no strikeouts on changeups. He's got two looking on sinkers that were just down the zone. The guys took thinking they were four seams because it's not a great sinker. It just
it's the slider that gets all the whiffs for him,
and then the slider and the four seam get all the whiffs. So I think it's almost 50-50 with the rest of the strikeouts there. So and he functions those up, but he has four pitches that you have to think about, especially based on if you're lefty or righty. Now there's the 3-pitch mix that you have to be caught up with, especially if he uses those other things earlier in counts, which he tends to do to get the contact if it's going to happen. If he gets ahead of you with him, he's got good command of it, throws him for strikes. So that's really all he needs. And then he relies on the other ones, but he's a little bit more of a trying to, again, point towards that slider. I would say his four seam probably is more of his out pitch because he throws it, I think it's 53% of the time. It's like 53, 18, and then like 6 and 5 or something. So fastball, he's feeling really good about his fastball. He had a 15 run value on it last year. So he's just one of those, like, no one can hit my fastball, I'm going to keep throwing that. But he has that slider to go to if that becomes an issue. So watch those two usages switch before any other pitches get introduced, which means I think that's a sustainable future proofing of how he's going to move forward. And I feel like staying healthy and being able to command his stuff, he's going to have success in that role.
Yeah, he reminds me a little bit of the Griffin Jax, Jason Adam grouping, where it's 4 pitches, good command. One thing that has maybe sets him apart from that group, maybe Jax is like this. He's added velo every year. So he came up at 93.8. Then he was 95s in 22 and 23, 96 last year, 97.1 this year.
Maybe closing some thing. He's an adrenaline guy.
Yeah, it's not a trend that you would necessarily, project to continue. But if he remains at 96 plus, he's a guy that I think could be on the last 4-year list and the next 4-year list. Just because I think the floor seems really high on this. Like, even if he doesn't necessarily close a ton, I think he will finish this year with more saves than Conley, because he's got more use cases. It's a little bit easier to put him in. I think with Conley, there's times where you're like, oh, we can't put him in against these guys. Can't put him in against these guys. Throws 80% changeups, But did want to finish just with a little bit of bonus. I call this the bonus round. These are just pitches to click, pitches you need to know about. And I queued up a couple of them. Here is Brendan Little's curveball. Now, remember, he's on the list. He could throw more in the zone, but this is a nasty pitch, and this is the basis of how he could be a closer in the future.
And he got him. Same pitch.
He threw 3 that too. I watched that live. Just 3 of that.
88 miles an hour. He's Fernando Tatis saw 3 of those in a row. It's 88
it was 2-0, and then he threw 3 of those, and he swung at them. 88 though, I don't know how he does it. It's a true knuckle curve, like tumbling curveball at 88 miles an hour. There's only one guy I ever saw who could throw a curveball that hard, and it was only for about a year. Tyler Duffy did it for a bit, where he's throwing 86,
Craig
87.
Kimbrell is a guy. I think.
Yeah, Kimbrell too.
But Kimbrell was more maybe 85, 86, but like it was. And then Lance McCullers when he was healthy.
Yeah.
Those are the hardest knuckle curves I can think of. But yeah,
that's impressive.
neither one of them was 88. So that is just stanky. This next one, Avenue Rebate slider, has somewhat similar movement and similar velocity, but it's called a slider.
And he struck him out. 1-2.
That's a good pitch. I mean, it's again 87 two-plane movement. That's really nasty. This one is just a great. I think it's a great pitch. This one I'm not so sure about. I got a text from Jed Lowry actually about this guy. Here is Carlos Vargas's sinker.
Long hold. Swing and a miss. A huge.
I mean,
Yeah, that looked a little bit like a splitter.
yeah,
So it's a heavy sinker. He just has no command.
He has no command. Also, when I did a search, I found 3 swinging misses. 3 swings and misses on a sinker all year. And that's 97 with, really good sink. It looks nasty to the eye. Jed's texting me, who's this guy, and so I can't say that I definitively love him, but I do think I love him in this role now for Seattle, like getting the ball on the ground, throwing super hard, setting up, bring him in with traffic on in the 7th. Hopefully he doesn't create more traffic with walks, but that's sort of he's a really good role player right now. It's a pitch that you should know about. Did you have any pitches you wanted to throw on the Barbie?
I mean, the Vargas one was, but I'll just call out the last one we have here because he's a guy I was paying attention to in spring training, and that's Leisure. So his fastball, he's a really interesting guy as well. There's some Chicago guys that are kind of interesting. So I think we have one from him, right?
Yeah, we have breaking ball or change up way down.
Same deal, up and in, and strike 3. Leisure gets.
Yeah, he's got that weird. He's got a supinated. I could just tell based on how that moved. A supinated release, and he keeps like his arm super close to his body the whole time. So it's like all very like, it feels like a cutter. So he's that swing and miss up and in to a lefty.
Very little arm side movement.
It'll just tie you up. So I have a feeling when he goes, and this is a extrapolating guess, but based on how he releases the ball. When he throws up and away to a righty, it probably looks like a little bit of a cutter. When he throws up and in, it probably fades a little bit towards them. So he like stays out of it, moves away from the middle of the zone both places. Spencer Strider has that also, which maybe his is a little more true, but like that, I mean, 97, little perceived cut. Maybe if it's more true, but it looks like a cutter based on your arm motion, that plays. That's a type of fastball you can throw a lot and get a lot of swing miss on.
If you're looking at Stuff Plus and you're wondering why he doesn't rate better, it's because the breaking ball is just not very highly rated. I think it's a fairly boring gyro it's got a little bit of sideways movement, but at 87.7, it's just it doesn't make the case for itself. He's thrown a couple splitters. If Jordan Leisure is going to be the next guy, and I think he has the fastball to do it. That's a fastball that has ride over expected over dead zone. It also has less cut, like we've been talking about. I think he needs a secondary. I think there needs to be a tweak there. And the good news, I think, though, is that he can spin a slider. He spun a slider. So the question is, can somebody come to him and be like, hey, let's throw a sweeper? Like, what if you threw a sweeper off that? Or let's throw a death ball. Let's throw a power curve. We'll see what that looks like. I do think that he has the ability to do it. I do think he's maybe one tweak away from him being the next closer, but still a fastball you should know about.
Probably seems to change up too. I actually don't know if he does or not, but I tell every supinator, just seam shift that change up, see what happens.
It says split. Yeah, maybe a changeup is the way. But keep an eye on him because other than in that bullpen there isn't really anybody who's stepping forward. Cam Boozer's been pretty good, but I don't know that right now. I think it's anybody's game to be a closer in Chicago right now. And they're getting a little bit better. They're not as bad as the White Sox. I mean, it's not as bad as the Rockies. Not as bad as the White Sox last year. So they're gonna at some point identify a closer that might be their closer for 2 or 3 years. So you think about like Kyle Finnegan on the Nationals. He's had value to people. He's been a good closer. He may not have been a closer for a lot of other teams, but he was in the right place at the right time. I can't believe they DFA'd him and then re-signed him, and he's their
Cheaper.
closer again. Yeah, that's kind of a dick move.
I mean, it was one of those things where they weren't planning on doing that. It just the opportunity presented itself.
So
They probably just let him go, and then he's like, "Well, can I?"
Yeah, like okay, fine.
All right, cool.
If it's for a little bit less, yeah. But anyway, we hope you enjoyed our reliever bonanza. Thank you so much, Trevor May, for being a part of this. Thanks to everybody who listens, especially if you like the video on YouTube or join our Discord. The entry to the Discord is on the show notes, and we really appreciate your listenership. Thanks to you, Trevor May.
Of course.
Derek Van Riper, please come back.
Please come back. He's coming back. Don't worry, guys. He's coming back.
Thanks for listening.